Dana Perino, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. The Russia investigation moving into a new phase today. The first indictments announced in the special counsel's probe, and more could come. President Trump's former campaign chair, Paul Manafort, and one of his aides, Rick Gates, pleaded not guilty earlier in federal court on charges including money laundering and conspiracy against the U.S. The indictment makes no mention of President Trump, collusion, or the campaign. However, we also learned another campaign advisor, George Papadopoulos, pleaded guilty earlier this month to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russians. The president's response to the news, quote, "Sorry, but this is years ago, before Paul Manafort was part of the Trump campaign. But why aren't crooked Hillary and the Dems the focus? Also, there is no collusion." The White House following up with this.
Today's announcement has nothing to do with the president, has nothing to do with the president's campaign or campaign activity. The real collusion scandal, as we've said several times before, has everything to do with the Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS, and Russia. There are no activities or official capacity in which the Trump campaign was engaged in any of these activities. Most of them took place well before the campaign ever even existed.
Sarah, can you just explain what George Papadopoulos' role with the campaign was?
It was extremely limited. It was a volunteer position. And again, no activity was ever done in an official capacity on behalf of the campaign.
Greg, you've been following this closely all day.
Very closely. I mean, so Paul Manafort, we're finding out, was involved in shady dealings prior to the election. And other breaking news, Kevin Spacey's gay. I know, it's all mind-blowing. Everybody knew, everybody knows, and you can look at it two ways. No evidence of Russian collusion or no evidence of Russian collusion yet. That's all you've got. That's nothing else. I do sense a bit of deflation in the media. They're disappointed. They expected a pony for their birthday, and this is a goldfish. That's why you're seeing a lot of press saying, oh, this is only the first part. Just wait, just wait, just wait. And maybe they're right, but right now, we knew this was coming. We knew what Manafort was. He's a, what do you call it, a hired gun that you hire specifically because he'll do whatever he needs to do for 4 months, and then he goes. So what's...
Well, I don't know if that's why you would hire him. Well,
and what's with Papadopoulos? That is the world's greatest name.
I just like saying I've said it all day, and it's hard.
And what's with dragging Kevin Spacey into this?
No, I'm just saying it's such a shock, isn't it? It's a shock. He's the Hollywood's ladies' man.
But Kimberly...
Our generation's Rock Hudson.
If we could talk about the actual charges for Manafort and Gates. So how serious are they? I mean, when you're talking about that type of money and money laundering and defrauding the United States, that's a pretty big deal.
No, it absolutely is. So this was really, big breaking news this morning. And what I found to be significant as well is for some reason he did not think or see that coming, that sources close to him said that as of Saturday, even someone that spoke to him said, listen, he didn't think that he was among those included. I think there's more to come as well. And so I'm curious as to whether or not they're going to try to work or cut some kind of deal with him to get more information. But, this is something I think that the president should steer clear of and not make any comments about it and let it work its way through, the system.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why they should defend Manafort. And not that they really did today, but why would you defend the guy with him? Basically, if you're talking about draining the swamp, that's the kind of swamp creature you're talking about. Yeah, somebody who's willing to break the law, work for a hostile foreign government, and then launder the money so that they didn't have to pay taxes on it.
Just a delegate counter, only there for a few months. We remember. I don't even remember his name. Is it Paul? Is it John? Doesn't matter. My mom calls me first thing in the morning and she says, Jesse, Paul Manafort conspiring against America, passes the phone to my dad. My dad says Manafort's going to rat out Trump. Everything's going to die. Now, my mom just texted me. And she says, Papadopoulos is the Gordon Liddy of the pack. How is your history? Do you even know Gordon Liddy? So I think the left is really upset that it wasn't bigger, and they can't wait till the Watergate thing spirals out of control. I think it's easy to indict someone, as you know, especially if you have a grand jury in D.C. Indicting a Republican is not that hard. It's much harder to convict. He's innocent until proven guilty. If anything, he's guilty of liking the finer things in life. Apparently, he spent $12 million on Beverly Hills shopping sprees and Benzes and Range Rovers and housekeeping and racked up a bunch of pricey real estate. I was reading, I want to sound like Dana Perino.
Who got all that?
I was reading the National Review this morning, and Andrew McCarthy, his article was excellent, and he said none of these charges are a slam dunk. None of them. He might have been overcharged in order to squeeze him. And
what I said.
What did he basically do? He was lobbying for the government of Ukraine and then concealed some proceeds from it. On the surface, it doesn't seem like that bad, but if you believe all the conspiracy theories, once he's looking at hard time, and this guy does not look like he wants to spend a day in prison. He looks like he likes the soft things in life.
You can't
blame him?
What does that
he
mean?
likes like plush upholstery, and he's got a $20,000 a month housekeeper. There's no way this guy is going to spend a day in jail. He will start making things up to spend time outside of prison.
$20,000 house.
You can't be cool with hiding money so you don't have to pay your taxes.
Absolutely not. No, listen, if this guy's guilty of financial shenanigans, he should be charged.
Well, it goes back to 2012, and they have a trail.
Exactly. But like you said earlier, it predates him joining the Trump campaign. Trump was not mentioned once in the indictment. There was no collusion here. There was nothing about hacking the election here. I think the real issue is Papadopoulos. I just like saying the name Papadopoulos. But Papadopoulos, what he did, Hillary did 10 times worse. Oh, my God. Hillary was the one that paid millions of dollars to dig up Russian dirt, to collude, and to influence an election and possibly an investigation. Papadopoulos is just some 30-year-old overly ambitious guy that tried to dig up dirt, failed. Remember Brian Fallon, Hillary's spokesperson, said getting opposition research dirt from foreigners is a good thing, and then tried to set up a meeting between Trump and Putin. That got killed by the Trump campaign. So maybe he's cooperating now. There are some emails going back and forth. The White House provided the investigators with those emails, but now I'm hearing something like he may have been wearing a wire, which I think scares everybody in the swamp.
And Juan, let's get your take on this. Papadopoulos was arrested the day after the Manafort home raid that we learned about in July.
Right. So Papadopoulos is probably the most serious of the issues today in terms of looking forward, if you want to look forward. But let's stop for a second before I get there and just talk about Manafort, because Manafort has an interesting history that I think is pretty well known. Manafort worked in Reagan's campaign, then in '80 starts his own lobbying firm with Charlie Black and Roger Stone, another Trump intimate, and then goes off afterwards, and he's representing some absolutely reprehensible people around the world. I mean, so the question becomes, and I think this is one issue you raised earlier, Dana, why would Donald Trump hire Paul Manafort? I mean, it's a real question.
Stone recommended him.
Well, but I mean, it's not like you say, wow, who were you bringing in the tent to represent you at this point?
But that's been known for a while. I mean, that was actually, and that was brought up at the time. But Manafort and his deputy, Rick Gates, who also pleaded not guilty today, they were able to get the convention delegates to vote.
That was after he brings them back to bring together the votes.
But I would imagine that's why you hire them, because they know that he thought he could do that job.
No, because But what I'm saying to you is we can hire lots of effective people who will employ all sorts of means in order to get what they want, but you don't bring them in if you're running for president and you realize this could have tremendous negative implications for you and for your reputation down the line. But to get back to Papadopoulos, I think that what we now understand is, and I think this is, to me, the most intriguing part, he says he has a meeting with a professor over in London, and the professor says to him, oh, you know what, Russia has a batch of emails on Hillary Clinton, batch of dirt, right? And then we learn, Roger Stone is saying, oh yeah, more is coming, and then, guess what, more does come in terms of the hacked emails from John Podesta and the Clinton campaign. So the question is, at that point...
I don't follow.
You don't follow what?
No. How you got from hacking Hillary's emails to the meeting?
How he got from the emails. The professor who has contacts with Russia, in fact, that's the reason Papadopoulos was meeting with him. The professor says to him, we've got a batch of emails from the Clinton campaign.
Okay.
And then what you get is people like Roger Stone advertising, we've got lots to come. And the suggestion there would be that somehow it was communicated inside the Trump campaign that Russia was in fact working.
And then there's another way to look at it, Greg, which is to say that they were blowing the kid off. A kid, he's 30 years old and he's responsible for his actions, but that he's overzealous, and they're like, please, would you just please go away? Like, we need this is not going to be a high level thing. And I don't know if that's what's going to happen. And he pleaded guilty, so I guess he's
enough of the professor.
guilty.
Where is Marianne? Where is she in all this racket? I don't know. I do think that the Manafort scandal, what you're seeing now, is, I guess, when you look at it, a problem that you hope to have, because it means you won. It's like they hire this guy and they go, well, he's actually a pretty dark character, but if we win, we'll deal with it then. And I think that's and remember, they let him go pretty quick because they used him for one.
He was a specialist.
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, he was charged with conspiracy against the U.S. and that's defined as an effort to defraud the U.S., right? Have you ever paid your dog babysitter in cash?
Lock her up.
That's defrauding. That is not paying taxes. Not paying taxes.
That's not me not paying it. That's not me not paying it.
It's Jasper.
Jasper under said bus.
You know what defrauding the U.S. is? Nice. Kneeling during the national anthem.
So we've gone from blaming Clinton to blaming Perino.
Exactly.
Excellent.
I am transitioning.
I see how this is going.
How do you really talk about
there was one other development today that sort of flew under the radar, and it happened around 1 o'clock today. Tony Podesta, the big Democratic power lobbying guy, who we found out about 2 weeks ago was at least being spoken to by the investigators on Mueller's team, he steps down from his very prestigious lobbying firm today. What do you think that means?
I think it's significant. I think there's something in the wind, shall we say. And so he's probably getting word and is probably getting prepared to kind of preempt if something could come down against him. But it makes sense if you look at the factual web of characters and associations here that's been unveiled over the last couple of weeks. I think that's a name we'll hear more about tomorrow and by the end of the week.
Yeah, well, he was a subcontractor, basically.
He's probably Company A or Company B if you read the indictment.
There's more people coming into focus on this that are going to be indicted.
And he actually worked for Uranium One.
Correct.
He got paid $200,000 to lobby on Uranium One's behalf. We all know Uranium One was behind the dossier.
So I think this is
working with Manafort.
I think anybody who thinks that this is, the end of the deal, no, this is like early in the game. And basically this is about Mueller trying to put pressure, just as he succeeded with Papadopoulos, now he's putting pressure on Manafort to flip on potentially the Trump campaign. He wants to know whatever he can learn about Trump, about the Trump organization's dealings. All of that now is in play.
But all this stuff occurred before Trump. He has to take it to the grand jury, right?
Let me just, excuse me just a second. It occurred before Trump. Right. But the idea is that Manafort is locked into Russia, the Ukrainians, and that's why the Russians would have come to him and he would have gone to the Russians.
So I guess what you're saying is, okay, all this bad stuff happened before Donald Trump, so maybe Trump's flaw was a less than stellar background check. We've all been there, including MSNBC.
All right, we have more.
I got no rules, I count 'em.
Back now to the charges filed against President Trump's former campaign chair and his deputy in the special counsel's Russia probe. Judge Napolitano thinks this is just the beginning of much more to come.
This is the first of many dominoes to fall. That Bob Mueller is following the standard MO of federal prosecutors. You got a totem pole, you got somebody at the top of the totem pole, that's your big prize. You're going to indict people going up the totem pole to see if you can squeeze them, threaten their ruination by loss of liberty and loss of property. This is the first of many steps in Bob Mueller's putting together an enormous puzzle.
Wow. What?
That's three. He did three metaphors. He did dominoes, totem pole, and then a puzzle. That's very confusing, Judge. Are we sure he's a judge?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, skipping Greg. Okay, Dana, puzzle boy. Dana, so when you hear the judge say that, he says it's a part of a puzzle, much more to come. This is what we were talking about in the last block, to say that I think this is just scratching the surface. This is what he started kicking it off with. And then they're going to use, and this is what I did as a prosecutor, you get these people, and then from them you pull threads. And they try to
or you roll it up like a toothpaste tube, right?
This is like metaphor hell. Threads and toothpaste.
I could totally follow everything that was going on.
Of course, exactly.
I think one thing that might have been a little bit of a surprise today is that Rick Gates gets brought up again, because people sort of forgot about him. He wasn't somebody who was let go immediately, as Manafort was. He stayed around on the campaign. He worked on the inaugural committee, or in the transition, that period right after the election, and then he worked on the inaugural committee. So I think that was a little bit of a surprise, like, oh, everyone forgot about him. I do think that in some ways people might have been surprised today that it wasn't Mike Flynn, the former national security advisor, had been on the campaign trail, who we know has been in contact with prosecutors in this case. So I don't know if there's more to come or not. I don't know. I feel like it's pretty locked up. This guy, the Papadopoulos, got arrested in July, and we don't hear about it until today. I mean, that's a pretty tight operation, I think.
Okay, Jesse, so when you hear them talk about, there's more to come, et cetera, I mean, do you think, you were mentioning in the last block, that you really think perhaps they're going to try to use, Manafort to get him to roll on as somebody closer, et cetera, to President Trump's inner circle?
I think you have to assume that there is major international conspiracy and collusion between Trump and Russia to buy into the premise that he's just squeezing Manafort in order to get the big fish.
Right.
What if there is no criminality with Russia?
Right.
So you're squeezing Manafort for
Well, that's
nothing.
what Peter King was saying, that he's been present and privy for some of the actual testimony of people coming in, like Trump's lawyer, and nothing so far that he's heard, he said, suggests or ties in anything to collusion with the Russians. The best they can hope to do, Juan, is make kind of a tangential connection to say, well, maybe President Trump and his team knew that Manafort had these connections, but where's the proof of that?
Right. Well, I think it's a little different is the way I would view it, Kimberly, because I think, one, remember Manafort was at that meeting in 2016 that was arranged by Donald Trump Jr. And so Manafort is at that meeting, Jared Kushner's at that meeting.
With the Russian PR
And
tip.
then we learned last week that the woman who was there, in fact, had notes that had been coordinated with the Russian government. So she's at this meeting. She says, oh, I've got nothing to, oh, turns out she does have some connection to the Russian government. And then you have Manafort, who took notes at this meeting. And guess who has these notes, who recovered the notes? I don't know if he recovered them when he busted into the guy's house, but he has Manafort's notes from that meeting. So he's going to want to know from Manafort, what happened at that meeting? And secondly, was there follow-up to it? So that then leads, and this is, how you were thinking. You were saying, well, there's no direct tie. But if they know that, in fact, the Russians are taking certain steps, then they are going to take maybe coordinated. It's not necessarily collusion by your definition, but by mine it would be, hey, these two are working together.
Okay, so one point to what Juan is speaking to, and Jesse, I get you to respond to it. Now, if you look at the specific language in the indictment, there's 13 wire transfers, and when you do financial crimes cases like this, you follow the money, you go back, and what it appears to me is that Mueller is really trying to stretch the timeline by showing these series of 13 wires from 2012 to 2014 to show that it is actually in sort of the nexus of that time frame of the connection and a relationship with President Trump and the campaign, etc. So trying to move it down here to then where he starts working, for delegates, etc. That's to me, that's what I see that he's trying to do, to rope it in.
Does the timeline stretch as far as 2016? Because what I read, it went to 2006 to 2014.
2014, 100%, and then it says at least until 2016. So that is an attempt, because you can say, for example, say I'm going to plead a case out, I'm going to charge a defendant, and what do we always say? We say on or about the, December 12th. So it could be 11th, it could be the 13th, and that's how you cover it. You put it sort of in a...
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speculate. It seems like you know what you're talking about.
It looks like it.
Juan's point, too, you're talking about the Russian lawyer at the meeting at Trump Tower. Now, she's been tied to Fusion GPS as well. So if you do pull the thread and we come back to having Mueller investigate Fusion GPS, and we talk about Podesta, not the brother, the actual campaign chair, saying to the Senate that he had no idea who paid for this. That seems like a lie, and it also seems like paying for Russian dirt to influence election. So, and if his brother falls as well, you could have the same thing that happened with James Comey.
Right.
Where in the minute, the Democrats, they love James Comey, impeachable, man of integrity. And then what happens in October? He turns things around, and then they start crushing Comey again. The same thing could happen once the Democrats fall. They're going to start impeaching the integrity of Mueller.
How's Fantasy Island working for you there?
It's great. I don't need any suntan lotion. I got a nice tan.
Reagan's.
I'm changing my name. Tell the producers to shut up.
I think you just did.
All right. I'm changing my name to Gutfeldopoulos. So from now on, you will address me as Gutfeldopoulos. Look,
What about Gutfeldopoulos?
What do they have Manafort on? They got him on money laundering, which is essentially passing off illegal funds as legit profits from a business. How different is that than hair and makeup? Seriously. Look, they take something awful and they make it beautiful. That's all it is.
Well, speak for yourself. Okay. Hillary Clinton has investigators of her own to worry about, and what a surprise. She's blaming us again for her mess. Next.
So, does Fox News have Hillary on the brain? Hillary thinks so.
I would have much preferred to have come to the dinner tonight from a slightly closer residence. But it does strike me that in the last few days, at least Fox News seems to think that's where I live in the White House. Because they spend a disproportionate amount of their time talking about impeaching me. They want to make a trade, I'd be more than willing.
Oh, Hillary, you big loser. It's true, she lost. That's a fact. But it is true, we at Fox News do love some Hillary because she's in the news, even though she lost. And it's because she lost that we're now finding out more about her campaign's dirty tricks. This is a side benefit of Trump's win. The renewed reporting keeps turning over rocks where we keep finding Hillary and her cronies. And who's turning over those rocks? It's The Hill newspaper, The Washington Post, and yes, even Mother Jones. That's not Fox and Friends. And it's news that the lurid dossier was paid for by the Clinton machine, collusive offspring birthed by Democrats and Russians, then obscured by layers of outright lies.
Oh, that was good.
The real issue is that this dossier was a big part of the justification for Mueller's probe. So they paid for a shady dossier, got an independent counsel out of it, and now they're getting indictments from that independent counsel that are unrelated to the dossier. At this point, they paid to get Manafort indicted for stuff that's unrelated to the election. Hilarious. Would we have known that had Hillary won? Doubt it. But let's not forget that the person spending the most time on Hillary is Hillary. Her blame everyone but me tour keeps going. She's the Energizer bunny in a pantsuit. If she was like that before the election, maybe she would have had that slightly closer residence she had been wishing for now. Well, you know, Dana, I went over the list of people that have been invested. It's not Fox News. We don't run Mother Jones, although sometimes I'd like to.
Well, you know, if they have a good story, you might do it. I do think that, so like on the left, any development in this Russian investigation has been called the smoking gun that proves that Donald Trump had definitely colluded with the Russians. But the opposite is true.
Right.
When anything there's brought up about Hillary, the right says this is absolutely proof that she was dirty and she was the one. So I think that's why if they can keep the integrity of the investigation, then that would be the best thing for America, just to get it done, let the chips fall where they may, the facts are what they are, and then we can just move on with our lives.
You know, Juan, she's making fun of us about talking about her, but she's everywhere. She's as visible as Trump is on that book tour. I turn on the TV, she's staring at me. Sometimes the TV's not even on.
But I think that the right just, they make her like bigger than life.
Look at how big she is back there.
You know, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me because it's striking. Nancy Pelosi used to be like, you know, the whipping boy, and now it's Hillary Clinton. But, you know, the reality is that even before the dossier, Greg, we knew that Russia and the government, the United States government, was investigating Russian interference in the election. But, you know, when Hillary Clinton complains and then I turn on and I see people saying, oh, lock up Hillary, I think, well, maybe she has a point.
Yeah. I know. Hillary attacks Fox, and look at how giant it's like Godzilla. So I don't even know.
I don't know. You know, like Jesse, I got to say.
But she's putting herself out there in the news all the time.
By the way, I'll admit it. I enjoy doing segments on her because it's comic relief.
You seem more cheerful, actually.
I am. I'm very happy. She makes me happy.
Yeah.
She's the other woman in my life.
You kind of can't tell. It's like, is she president? Because she's in the news every single day.
But
and every time I look,
Donald
she's speaking and doing something.
Donald Trump loves to talk about
He's minding his own business, just
Last
tweeting.
week, all he did was talk about her because he was throwing up smoke in anticipation of Monday's indictment.
I know, but well, that's what you think. But she's talking about him. He's talking about her. It's back and forth. It's norms of reciprocity. They're just sharing back and forth with one another.
Jesse, I want to play this. This is a sound on tape. That's what we call it in television.
Okay.
It's Kellyanne Conway on a show on the morning on Fox called Fox and Friends. You might have heard of it.
Okay.
Does okay in the ratings. Talking about HRC.
Look, we would be happy to stop talking about Hillary Clinton and the campaign. We dispensed with her a year ago, but she just won't go away. People are covering her book like it's not fiction, and they keep talking about what happened a year ago in these campaigns.
Jesse?
I mean, Hillary's like the boxer that won't leave the ring when the fight's over, and she's still out there throwing punches. Of course we're going to cover that. And Hillary making an impeachment joke, a little bit on thin ice there, Hillary. Last president that was impeached was your husband. In a certain way, I think she likes that Fox covers her the way we do because it makes her feel relevant. Without Fox doing it, there'd be no buzz with Hillary.
Gives her something to talk about.
I know, but you know when Hillary points her finger at Fox, you know she's guilty, and that's a signal to her friends in the media to look the other way and cover the treatment of her on Fox as partisan and not serious.
All right. On that note, new anthem protests on the football field. This time players taking a knee against their owner. That drama next.
An overwhelming majority of Texan players took a knee yesterday, but not to protest social injustice. They were demonstrating against comments made by the team's owner, Bob McNair, quoted saying, quote, "We can't have the inmates running the prison," at the NFL's owners meeting last week. He's since apologized. Not a great analogy, Juan. I can see why many of the players are upset by that. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, you know, there's a subtext to this whole thing, which is race. And so initially, when Colin Kaepernick started this was about how the police deal with especially poor black men and the high number of incidents of black men being killed. Now, it then went to another level this season with Trump bringing in all these things, including saying, oh, these owners are just afraid of the players. Like, oh, it's a bunch of white guys afraid of a bunch of black. What is this? I don't know. But now, when McNair is quoted in the ESPN, the magazine, as saying you can't have the inmates as if, oh, black men, you know, prisoners, the stereotypes. I mean, it was insulting. And so now it's gone. I mean, this thing continues to spiral. And now you have the players saying, hey, you know what? The owner knows that we not only are we playing hard and playing our hearts out, we put our bodies on the line for his team every week. And this is what he thinks of us.
It's just a shame, Kimberly, that the politics now has destroyed football. It's every week, and they're kneeling for everything now. I'm not saying what he said was right, but at the same time, week after week after week, people are taking a knee.
I think it's just become such a distraction. So now instead of like getting the score, what you do is you get the kneel.
Right.
Who kneeled? Who didn't? Who stood?
Kneel
and I'm
stats.
like, okay, let's do that. All right, I got it. But let's move on and actually focus on the sport and what they were paid to do and intended. I just think it's just gone on too long right now, and there is another venue where they should be addressing those concerns.
On Neil Cavuto's show. You can kneel on Neil.
Yes, it's actually perfectly appropriate.
That's right. Gutfeld, how do you feel about this? My take is, you know,
he feels
they're
seated.
kneeling. It's gotten to a point where no one cares anymore.
Well, you know what? I want to focus on the actual idiom. Remember the empty barrel was construed as racist?
Can't say that.
Yeah, you can't, but it's not racist at all. We know that it's not racist. The correct phrase that the owner was looking for, the inmates are running the asylum. This idiom has been used forever,
right?
And we've talked about it. It's been used on Washington. It's been used, it's used in high school. Oh my God, the idiots are running the asylum. It's an old phrase. He changed it when he said prison, and what happened is that was a mistake. We should have used the correct idiom. However, you could argue that if you see that as racist, you're the racist for assuming inmates means blacks. That's and he if he meant that, he wouldn't have said it because he knew it would have been suicide. So he said, so when you say, he said the inmates are running the prison, he says that all these players are like prisoners because they're black. No, he was trying to use an idiom and he used it clumsily, which leads to my bigger point here. Who's getting in the most trouble over these things, over language? Older people. Older people who do not know that the world has changed. So every person that comes
You know somebody like that?
Yeah, I know a few people like that, but they don't know. And it's like he's saying, the inmates are running the prison. And they go, that's racist. And again, the guy's going, I wasn't being racist. I was just saying, and everybody uses that. And it's like, well, no, you can't say that anymore.
Well, they say inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah, the inmates are running the asylum. He screwed it up, but he didn't screw. If you actually thought he was trying to be racist, you're seeing that.
Would you agree with that assumption?
Well, I think that when he tried to then further clarify, he says that he was talking about how they've been making strategic decisions affecting our league without adequate input from ownership over the past few years.
Right.
So I think that's what he was trying to say. You use idioms because it helps facilitate conversation because everybody knows what you mean.
But if you don't
say it. But if you are clumsy, you say the wrong word.
Or if a generation doesn't know. Young people under 30, maybe they've never heard that one before.
I think we've heard it
Just
before,
relatable.
but I think you also remember what Donald Trump said. Donald Trump said you can't have the owners operating in such a way that would indicate they're afraid of the players. And again, the owners are white and Trump supporters. The players are black. I don't know who they support or not, but you can make all sorts of assumptions. But clearly, Trump has been using this to divide people left and right.
What if you don't see race?
Yeah, what if it was white players, Juan, that were kneeling and the white ownership didn't? But what if it was predominantly white players?
Well, then you'd have a different situation.
Okay, but do we, Juan? But do we have a different situation?
Yes, we do.
Wouldn't the owners still not want the players to kneel regardless if they're white or black?
I don't know.
Regardless of color.
The owners wouldn't want a white player, a black player kneeling at all.
The objection is the knee, not the skin color.
Excuse me. I think we politicize football. I go to football, and I can tell you about the shows of the jets flying over and the big flags.
That's patriotism. That's
this was brought in, Greg, recently in order to sell the sport as an expression of patriotic fervor.
Well, look at how well the World Series is going.
That's politics.
I don't see patriotism as politics.
To Greg's point,
maybe I'm old school.
To Greg's point, he's saying if you say that, it's because you're looking at it through a racial filter or a prism, where that's what you're looking and expecting to see. Like you've trained your mind, to be able to see it that way.
Inmates are running the prism.
And so it says more about you, he said, than the person that said it. And he's trying to say that if the guy, it was obviously racist, if he said it that way, he would know that it would be perceived that way, and therefore he would in fact not make the statement.
Exactly.
And
Thank
I
you.
speak, Greg?
Yes, you're going to defend me in trial.
And lastly, just want to remind everybody that the kneelers on the Texans, they lost. When we return, top Republicans slamming Special Counsel Mueller on leaks coming from his investigation. Right back.
As you know, the first charges were filed in the special counsel's Russia probe. Word got out Friday that this was coming. Trey Gowdy and some other top Republicans suggest the leak to the press could be criminal.
The only conversation I've had with Robert Mueller, it was stressing to him the importance of cutting out the leaks with respect to serious investigations. So it is kind of ironic that the people charged with investigating the law and executing the law would violate the law. And make no mistake, disclosing grand jury material is a violation of the law. Somebody violated their oath of secrecy.
It's true.
Go right ahead.
Well, they're supposed to preserve the sanctity of the grand jury proceedings and indictments. And look, everybody knows about it. Everybody knew before it was coming out and it was leaked. So he's absolutely right. And he's a former prosecutor. He knows that this is inappropriate, what transpired here. I mean, of course, there was speculation before, early on in the investigation, obviously MANAFORT, and we saw them target his house and go in there with the whole team, et cetera. That was also kind of unbecoming, and that it was done in such a large, splashy way. and now this situation. So, you know, they have to do an investigation into that. It's never ending, like, you know, ball of yarn, Greg.
But didn't
Metaphor
Jesse,
Monday.
but didn't, I think Dana mentioned earlier, Papadopoulos was actually not only arrested and charged, but pled guilty, and we didn't know about it at all.
Dana makes a great point. They kept it under wraps, but there have been other leaks by the Mueller team, we believe, and that needs to be subject to scrutiny. They leaked that Trump was under investigation for obstruction of justice.
They leaked that?
Well, no. Leaks came out of the investigation. You can't necessarily pin it on Mueller, but things are getting out into the press that shouldn't. For instance, that there were subpoenas against Don Jr. for his meeting, that the grand jury was impaneled in D.C., and that the probe was expanding into financial crime. So people on the right will say, listen, when you add that to the fact that there's been a lot of high-profile Democratic attorneys assigned to this case, when you add that to the raid that was pretty strong, and the fact that Mueller's buddies with Comey, and Mueller was at the FBI when the Uranium One deal was looked at and then the investigation was not followed through with, there seems to be some suspicion around his impartiality, but I think it's best that everybody just waits and see what happens next.
Well, Dane, in fact, Trey Gowdy also says that it's very important for Republicans to give Bob Mueller time and a chance.
Yeah, they said just let him do his job, and I don't know who is leaking, but I do know that just because I used to work at Justice Department. When you have a special prosecutor, you have to then keep the Justice Department apprised of what's going on. When the leaks have happened is at that juncture is when the Justice Department learns of it, or the attorneys for the people who are targeted learn about it, because then they can get it out there, and it might work in their interest to let people know that it's happening.
Gee, you think? As a reporter, I can tell you those are good sources. Greg?
I think we need depends for the soul. All this leaking. Alan Dershowitz is right. He wrote a column on this. These investigations should be open like the 9/11 Commission, where you take evidence in public and it's conducted by nonpartisans. Because instead what you have here is what Alan Dershowitz has coined the criminalization of political differences. I think he has a book out on it. And he is a legendary liberal. He's a progressive. He voted for Hillary, but even he knows that we are criminalizing political differences.
All right, one more thing is up next.
Does that make me crazy?
Get him up.
It's time now for one more thing. KG.
All right, thank you, Dana. So we can take you live to the White House, where you can see First Lady Melania Trump and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, giving candy to the kitties. Greg, you're missing out. So this is on the South Lawn. It's happening right now in honor of Halloween, which is very cute. Can you imagine the memories of the children to be able to be there at the White House and getting candies from the First Lady and the President?
Can't take candy from a baby.
No, Greg would.
It's pretty good.
Adorable. I love
it.
It's very nice.
Greg, you get to go next.
Excellent. I haven't banned a phrase in a while, so let's ban a phrase. Open secret. I'm so tired of hearing this phrase. It is a contradiction. If it's an open secret, then it's not a secret. We keep hearing this about Weinstein and James Toback and now Kevin Spacey. It's not an open secret in Hollywood. It's open enabling by Hollywood hypocrites. Essentially, Hollywood is now a sanctuary city for abusers and rapists.
That's good.
That was sort of monologue-ish. Like you could have done a monologue on that.
We'll be right back.
No, we get to go to Juan next.
Well, a great game in Houston last night. Astros came back in extra innings, a thriller, and they beat the Dodgers. All this action, though, not on the field. Watch this.
Amazing.
This is unbelievable, right?
Season left.
Brent.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so at first glance, this looks so outrageous, but it turns out the guy who grabbed the ball is the brother-in-law of the woman who caught the ball. The two are huge Astros fans, and neither wanted any part of a ball hit out off the bat of a Dodger.
Was that nuts or what?
I thought that was pretty, because
that game
it
was
looks
amazing.
different.
Did you stay up all night?
No, well, I stayed up much. I think Jesse stayed up all night.
I did.
It had bigger ratings than NFL, didn't it?
What?
It had bigger ratings.
Better rating than NFL. By the way, do you remember a few weeks ago, folks, I highlighted a missed call that may have cost the Nationals their game? Well, guess what? Major League Baseball's now confirmed. The umps were wrong. My team robbed.
Oh, wait a second. Time out. Juan can't get one more thing.
He just did. No, it's
double.
like you
One
do
more
it all
thing.
the time.
You promote your show and then you do one
Next
more
week,
thing.
Look at this, 7-part series.
Yeah, enough one. Anyway, also at the game the other night in Houston, W was out there with his dad, and his father passes him the ball. H-Dub's looking good right there, and the Astros pull over, and W walks out to the mound, fires a strike right down the middle.
There you go.
Still got it after all these years. Well done.
Remember 9/11 after the game?
That's right. Same deal, except 9/11 was from the rubber.
Well, he did pretty good.
And with a bulletproof vest.
He's
Exactly.
so cool.
All right, mine is that Jesse knows one of these guys. There are 4 teenagers running for governor in Kansas, and the Daily Wire got an exclusive interview with all 4 of them and did a forum. And you got to look at this and see their answers. They've got really smart takes on things, and there's no age limit or age requirement to run for governor of Texas. So, I'm sorry, Kansas. There's 1 Democrat and 3 Republicans. Very libertarian, actually, in many of their views, if you have a chance to check it out. So, a little exercise in civics there. What do you think, Jesse, about those guys?
Well, I interviewed the one on the right sitting down, and he's modeling his campaign after Bernie, so good luck in Kansas.
Very, very good. All right. Set your... I'm sorry, what? I have to stretch. Okay, but we're trying something new.
Oh, yeah.
Today, stretching, because we are going to have a special handoff to a very good friend of ours. What does that signal mean? Okay, set your DVRs. Never miss an episode of The 5 Special Report. Up next, Brett, I sure hope you're there.
I'm
Take
here.
it away. Okay,
Dana, good to see you guys. Nice show. This is the first handoff. I like it. First of many.
Right. We can't see you.
Well done.
Where are you, Brett?
I'm right here.
That
We'll
was a
take
fumble.
over. Thank you, guys.
Handoff.
So the first charges are...